Okay, good evening, everyone. So today we're going to look at solving equations. I'm going to walk you through all the different types of equations there are, try an example for each and give you around 30 seconds to a minute to try one yourself. If you have any questions or if you're stuck on anything at all, you can write in the chat and I will look through it as I'm going along. It's going to be a really quick, concise lesson, 20 minutes, just basically going through the steps really clearly and quickly. And then if you have any questions, just feel free to stop me as I go along. So starting from the beginning, how can we describe these expressions? So I've put these up as a starter just because it's really important you understand what an equation actually means. So X is always your unknown or any letter. It's basically what we're trying to find. And the first one says 4x plus 6. So that means you are timesing x by 4 then adding 6. So it's important you understand what's actually happening here, because when we're solving equations, we're working backwards. So you'd be subtracting the 6, then dividing by the 4. The next one says you're dividing x by 3 then adding 4. So if you're working backwards, you would subtract the 4 and then multiply by the 3. Because what I see happening a lot in solving equation questions is that students would multiply by the 3 first and then subtract the 4, which you can't do. So the last one says x plus 4, then all of it divided by 4. So notice how this is different to the one before. Okay, everything is divided by 4 here. Okay, so you do x plus 4, x plus 5, sorry, then divide by 4. So if you're working backwards, you would times by 4 first and then subtract the 5. Okay, so thank you for correcting me. It was x plus 5. Okay, so moving on to the first type. So a lot of solving equations you could maybe do in your head for these ones, but that's why I'm working with decimals here. So that make sure you've got your calculators ready as well. Or if not, just watch and pay attention and see if you can do your calculations on the side. So solve 2x plus 8 equals 12.1. So we want to find what x is. So we're going to start by working backwards from the 12.1. You're going to subtract the 8 from both sides. So you get 2x equals 4.1. The reason why we're subtracting 8 from both sides is with equations, what you do to one side, you have to do to the other side. We're keeping it balanced. Once we've subtracted that, we've still got a 2 in front of the x. And like we said before, that is x times 2. So we have to do the opposite, which is divide by 2. And you're just left with x is equal to 2.05. So that's the first example. If you don't get a chance to take notes, don't worry. I will send this PowerPoint or this lesson to you afterwards, so don't worry. I'm going to do one more example here, and then I would like you to try the one on the right. So the first thing you do is, because it's x times 5 take away 2, you're going to add the 2 to both sides. So you're left with 5x equals 6. And then you want to get rid of that times by 5. So you're going to divide by the 5 and x is equal to, you can either leave it as 6 over 5 or write it in decimal form, which is 1.2. Okay. If any of you are in foundation, then a lot of the questions you get would be whole numbers. So you might look at the question and think, oh, I know what x is already. That's absolutely fine. You don't need to do any workings in that case. And you can just write what the x is. But those doing higher will generally get more complicated equations. So it's important you understand how to work backwards. Okay, so the one on the right, hopefully you've already started having a go at that. If not, can you have a go? And I'll give you about 20 to 30 seconds. Okay, so the first step, you have x times 7 take away 6 equals 8.3. So we're going to start by getting rid of that negative 6 by adding 6 to both sides. So then you're left with 7x equals 14.3. Thank you for writing the answers in the chat. Please do this for all the questions. I think that's great. Thank you so much. And then the next step is you divide by 7. With algebra, once you learn the steps, it applies for all types of algebraic problems, okay? And this question, if you put it into your calculator, you would notice that the decimal goes on. So I asked for you to round it to 2 decimal places. A lot of times you can leave it in fraction form, and that's absolutely fine too. Okay, any questions on this, please write in the chat. And I'm going to move on to the next type of question. Okay, so the next type of question is x divided by 3 plus 6 equals 11.2. So remember from the starter, we said that you're dividing by the 3, then adding 6. So we start from the last part, which is the add 6. We're going to subtract 6 from both sides. So you're left with x over 3 equals 5.2. And then to get rid of that divide by 3, you're going to times 3. And you're just left with x is equal to 15.6. Have a go at the one on the right, please. I'm going to give you 20 seconds. I'll give you a bit longer time. We've got an answer already, which is great. Okay, so finish off if you haven't already while I'm talking. So it's x divided by 5 take away 2. So you're going to start with the take away 2 part. So let's add 2 to both sides. And you get x divided by 5 equals 3.9. Then to get rid of that divide by 5, we times 5. And then you'll be left with x is equal to 19.5. Any questions you can write in the chat? And I'm going to move down to the next one. Okay, so now slightly different. In this case, the example on the left is x plus 6, then divided by 4. So everything is divided by 4 here. This is when you times by the denominator first. Okay, so we're going to times by 4 on both sides. Then you're left with x plus 6 equals 8.8. And then to get rid of that plus 6, we subtract the 6. And then you're left with x is equal to 2.8. Any questions, write in the chat now. Otherwise, have a go at the one on the right. Yeah. Go ahead, Fatima. So the only reason why I put times by 4 on the left-hand side is to show that what you do to one side, you do to the other. But actually, in fact, all you're really doing is you're going to times a 2.2 by 4. Because the divide by 4 times by 4, that cancels out, okay? Because they're opposites of each other. Can you see that? That's why we're always writing what we're doing underneath, because it's the opposite and it cancels out. Is that clear? Okay, good. So a lot of people have finished this and you're writing the answers, which is amazing. Let's quickly go through it to anyone that hasn't. So because everything is divided by 3, we're going to times by 3 on both sides. So you're just left with x minus 4 on the left-hand side, and then 2.1 on the right-hand side. And then we just need to add 4 to get x is equal to 6.1. Lovely. Going to move down, getting slightly harder now. Hopefully you're confident with expanding brackets. If not, I'm going to quickly go over it now. So in this example, we have 2 times, because brackets means the number outside the brackets, you're timesing with everything inside. 4x plus 2 equals 30. So there are 2 ways you can do it. Because there's a little invisible times here, you could divide by 2 on both sides to just be left with 4x plus 2 equals 15. You can do it like that. Some cases, the right-hand side wouldn't divide easily by that number, so you might want to expand the brackets first. But I'm going to show you this method, method 1, and then you can choose which one you use. So I've divided by the 2, and then we're doing just like we did before, subtract 2 from both sides, get 4x equals 13, and then divide by the 4 to get x equals 13 over 4, or in decimal form, which I didn't actually do. 13 divided by 4 is 3.25. Method 2 is expand the brackets first. And I would actually like you to use this method, especially if you're not that confident, because this is a foolproof method. So we're going to expand this bracket first. So let's change the color. So you do 2 times the 4x to get 8x. And then 2 times the 2 to get plus 4 equals 30. Then I'm going to subtract the 4, get 8x equals 26. And then divide by the 8 to get x equals 26 over 8, which simplifies to 13 over 4. So you get the same answer either way. Okay, I can see people are commenting already. Yeah, fine, expanding the brackets is easier, perfect, do it like that then. You'll always get the right answer. Sometimes, especially if you go on to do A-level maths, it's easier to just divide by the number first. As long as you understand both methods, then you choose which one you prefer. Can you have a go at the question on the right, please? You might prefer to leave this in fraction form if you get a weird looking number. Okay, right, lots of people are writing their answers. I'm going to go through it for anyone that hasn't completed it yet. So I'll expand the brackets this time, only because if I was to divide by 3, 50 doesn't divide into 3 easily, okay? You won't get a whole number, an integer. So you might want to expand the bracket first to make it easier for yourself. So 3 times 2x is 6x, then 3 times minus 1 is minus 3. Then we're going to add the 3 and then divide by the 6 to get x equals 53 over 6, or a lot of you would have seen that it's 8.83, and that goes on. Okay. Right, lots of you got that answer, which is great. I'm going to move on to the next one. I'll leave that up so you can see it, the answer, if you're still copying. Okay, so solving equations with unknowns on both sides now. So in the previous examples, you would have seen that we just had x on the left-hand side or the right-hand side. In the examples that we're going to do now, we've got our unknown on both sides. So there's just an extra step here. We want to work out what the unknown is. So we want to move it all onto one side. So in the first example, we have 7a take away 5 equals 3a plus 17. I want to move the a's onto one side. So I'm going to take the smaller one and I'm just going to subtract it because it's a positive 3a there. So that my left-hand side then becomes 4a minus 5 equals 17. If it was a minus 3a on that right-hand side, you would add it. Okay, so whatever sign it is, you do the opposite. Now I have similar equations like the ones we were doing before. You just have to add the 5, and you've got 4a equals 22, and then divide by the 4 to get a is equal to 22 over 4, which is just 5.5. And just to repeat myself again, if you left it in fraction form, that's still absolutely fine. Have a go at the one on the right. Give you 10 more seconds. Very slow 10 seconds. Okay, so first step, I'm going to move the b's onto the one side. I always look at the smaller one. I just think it's easier like this. The smaller one is the 4b, so I'm going to subtract it. So I get 4b plus 5 equals 17. So moving back to the first step, how do we know to plus 4b or minus 4b? Well, this 4b here, if there's no sign in front of it, that means it's a positive number. So to get rid of it, you have to subtract it. If it was minus 5b on the right-hand side, I would add 5b to both sides, okay? I'll see if we've got another example like that afterwards. Okay, so that's 4b plus 5 equals 17. Then I'm going to subtract the 5 to get 4b equals 12, and then divide by the 4 to get b is equal to 3. Any other questions on this? No? Okay, the next one. So we have brackets this time on the left-hand side. So I'm going to expand my brackets first. So 4 times x is 4x. 4 times minus 3 is minus 12 equals x plus 9. And then we just do exactly what we did before. We're going to move the smaller x onto the other side. So I'm going to subtract the x. So I'm just left with 3x minus 12 equals 9. Then I'm going to add my 12 to get 3x equals 21, and then divide by 3 to get x equals 7. Have a go at the one on the right. And if you finish that one, you can try the questions underneath. Okay, so I'm going to go through the last question that we just did. So I'm going to expand the bracket. So 5 times x is 5x. 5 times minus 2 is minus 10 equals 4x minus 1. Then I'm going to get rid of this smaller x, move that to the other side by subtracting it. So I've got x minus 10 equals minus 1. Add the 10 to get x equals 9, which all of you. Right, thank you, Marta. Okay, well, thank you so much for attending today's lesson. I hope you found it useful. on quadratic sequences, where I'll show you a quick trick on how to find the nth term. Okay, so make sure you book into that. I know some of you have already booked in already. For those that are aiming for grades 7 to 9, or if you're on grades 5 to 6 as well, I'm starting a course in February, which I'm sure you'll find really beneficial. So if you're interested in that, have a look on my profile, which will give you more information. If you ever have any other questions, then do let me know, and I'll see you next week otherwise.